Hey guys, it's Diana. Welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to do a video about the facts. 5 facts, if you will, about blindness. Somebody on Twitter had written to me and said that they wanted me to do a facts about blindness video. There is another blind YouTuber who did one recently. I'm sure there are other blind and low vision YouTubers who have done the same. So let's get started. I will link all of these sources down in the description because I believe that, you know, sources need to be cited. And you know what's weird is that when I was researching all of these things, I couldn't really find anything that was recent. A lot of the good sites that I found at the beginning that had really interesting facts and statistics were from 5 or 10 years ago, and obviously that's not relevant because we are in 2020. One of them, I believe, is from last year maybe, and the other one doesn't have a date, or maybe both don't have dates, but they looked like they were fairly recent. They were up in like the most relevant results on Google. And if you stay here, like to the end, we're gonna have 2 bonus facts about disability in general. Fun times, let's go! Alright, number 1, the first fact that you probably didn't know about blindness is that 285 million people worldwide are considered visually impaired, whereas 39 million of that 285 million are considered blind. I believe I talked about this in previous videos. If not, then I guess I should, but there's a difference between being completely blind and visually impaired. Some people use blind as a blanket statement, and that's fine. Some people say blind and visually impaired. Some people say visually impaired. The thing is that a lot of sighted people don't know what visually impaired means, and why would they? You just see a person with a guide dog or a cane walking around out in public and think that they might be blind when that's not the case. And I'm not sure if that includes people who can just see light and shadows. I'm assuming it's complete blindness, but I don't know. I am pulling this from the World Health Organization. I have this information up on my phone here. It doesn't specify if they're talking about complete blindness, like nothingness, or are also including those who can see light and shadows in the mix. Number 2, what I thought is very fascinating here is that this PDF from World Health Organization says that 90% of people who are visually impaired live in low or middle income countries. And like, that's just astounding to me because there are a lot of people who are blind in the US and in Canada and other developed countries. But then you look at the whole world, because again, we're talking globally, World Health Organization, and 90% of people who are visually impaired live in low or middle income countries. And it's very unfortunate because those countries may not have the resources that they need to be, you know, flourishing in society. Like, they may not be able to get orientation and mobility training, or the infrastructure may not be there. So like, it might be dangerous for them to walk outside of their house with a cane. A lot of people might not know what a cane is or be aware of like what that means. They may not be able to get a guide dog because maybe their country doesn't have access laws for service animal handlers, or there just might not be a guide dog school that they can go to, or they might not have the cane skills to be able to get a guide dog. And then there's education. A lot of people with disabilities who are in lesser developed countries typically are unable to get a proper education. I could go on and on and on about how important education is, especially for people with disabilities, because like, it's a whole other ball game when you have to fight to get accommodations. I'm going to talk about that in another video that I plan to do about my experience going through the K-12 school system as a visually impaired kid in mainstream schooling. It was quite the experience, but again, this is a developed country. If you look at people who are in lesser developed countries, they won't be able to go to mainstream school. They may have to go to a special school for the blind or for kids with disabilities, and you know, that's fine. I'm not knocking schools for the blind, but the education that they get there will probably not be the same level of education that they are able to provide at a regular school for kids without disabilities. Because again, it all goes down to training and the education that the teachers have. I know Perkins School for the Blind here in Massachusetts, they have an international program where they try to bring awareness to other countries about blindness and about children with disabilities and educating them. And I actually have met a few people in the past who were over here studying to be teachers of the visually impaired from other countries, which is great because then they're able to bring back the information that they learn here and properly teach kids and adults there so they can all flourish in society. Fact number 3, which I found very interesting, is that only 2 to 8% of people who are visually impaired use a white cane. According to this article here on Perkins' website, the rest of us rely on our usable vision, a guide dog, or a sighted guide. Even if you're visually impaired, you should learn how to use a cane. Like me, I'm low vision. I can pass as sighted. I've talked about this in previous videos, but I still use a cane. I was taught how to use one since I was like 7 or 8 years old. I did a whole video last year where I went into Boston for White Cane Safety Day. I will link that up in the cards and down below. It was great because we got to educate people about the cane, and guide dog users were there too, which is great because everybody needs to learn about guide dogs. But it's astounding that we look at the larger statistic of blind people here and only 2 to 8% of us use a cane. That, again, in my opinion, is just due to education. If you can't get access to an O&M instructor and can't learn how to use a cane, or maybe can't even get a cane, you're really not able to have that independence that the cane provides, and it's very unfortunate. And having a cane and being able to use the cane well could lead to getting a guide dog, because you need good cane skills in order to get a guide dog. That is like a huge prerequisite, is that you need to have good O&M skills to get a guide dog. Obviously, it says in the stat that others use guide dogs, so that means that the people who use guide dogs probably graduated from using a cane to a guide dog, so they were previously a part of that 2 to 8%. But still, that's 2 to 8% of 285 million people in the world who are blind. Like, that's not a lot of people. Fact number 4 is that 70 to 75% of people who are blind and working age are unemployed. That number obviously does not necessarily reflect those who want to work but are unable to find a job. It's just like the whole community. So you have people who are unable to work. You have people who do not want to work. You have people who cannot work because they rely on their SSI or SSDI benefits, because usually that comes with health care coverage. I talked a little bit about this in my working with a disability video that I uploaded recently. Again, that will be linked up in the cards and down in the description. It's just astounding because, like, a lot of us do want to work. Maybe we're not just given the proper opportunities or don't have the proper skills to be able to find a job, but even applying for jobs, in my experience, I've applied for jobs that I know I'm way overqualified for, and I never end up getting anything. Like, not even an interview half the time. I don't know if it's because of my disability or because there are too many other candidates or whatever other factor might be going into that, but it's very unfortunate because a lot of people who are blind do want to work. At least from what I've encountered, it's just that we can't find a job. And now with the virus happening and a lot of people being unemployed currently, it's a little bit harder because the demand outweighs the supply. All right, our last fact here about blindness is that only about 10% of people who are blind know how to read Braille. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they didn't learn Braille. It's just that 10% are literate in it. At least that's how I'm taking the statistic. This is from an NFB PDF that they put out about like 10 years ago. So I'm hoping that the statistics have changed. I have not found anything recent on it, unfortunately. I've literally been scouring the internet. However, that's not a lot of people. We don't know if that statistic is looking at just people who are completely blind, the whole 285 million visually impaired people in the world, or what. Because there are people with low vision who don't know how to read Braille because, like, they're able to read print or they just weren't taught it. There are a bunch of different factors that go in here. I learned Braille since kindergarten. I am not proficient in it. I did not keep up with my skills, and they changed it a bit recently, so we have Unified English Braille, which is great, fantastic, but I do not remember learning that because the change had happened after I had basically stopped my formal Braille learning. I did learn a bit of the UEB code. However, I'm not gonna go about and say that I am proficient in Braille because I am not. If you want to learn more about it, I highly recommend you seek out other blind content creators or Google, because this is not why we're here. I know I said at the end of this video that I was going to provide 2 extra facts here about disability in general, and it's very interesting because I was actually sent these in an email this morning on a list that I'm in. It was like a part of a broader article about disability with a bunch of facts, but the 2 that really stuck out to me were 19% of people with disabilities in the United States are employed. Now, that's not a lot of people. The other fact here that we have, which I think is really fun, is that the poverty rate for Americans with disabilities is about double the rate of those who are non-disabled. I'm going to link those sources because, again, they're separate from the blindness sources that I was using. Everything will be down in the description. I could go on and on about all of these topics. It's very disheartening to see that the poverty rate in the disabled community is double the rate for non-disabled people. And again, that goes back to not being able to find a job. A lot of people with disabilities receive SSI or SSDI. If you want to learn more about what all of that is, I encourage you to check out any one of Blind to Billionaire's videos. He and his wife have actually been doing a really great update series recently on the COVID stimulus checks and how that affects SSI beneficiaries. I will link his channel in the description down below. He is a great wealth of information and they're just really kind people, so I would love you to all go support them. Receiving those types of income benefits that usually will also come with healthcare benefits like health insurance, it is nothing to live off of. It is basically living below the poverty line because usually it goes by cost of living in your state. This is why we have affordable housing and low-income housing, because people who are maybe unable to work and cannot possibly, you know, continue to live in the home with their family or whatever, they need somewhere to go, and that may be all that they can afford. It's unfortunate because there are people who are able to work in the disability community. There are people who are also unable to work in the disability community, and it really just goes down to the level of training and perspective that you give. Employment and disability is a very important topic to me. I talked more about this in my employment video, which you can go watch or you can not watch. Anyway, I feel like I've been rambling a lot. Those are 5 facts about blindness, 2 facts about people with disabilities. It is starting to storm here, so I'm gonna go and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.